I would say that the two important things that any economic system has to do is create wealth and then distribute it. And the distribution is not just a moral imperative. If you don't distribute things fairly, the people on the wrong end of the distribution inequality will throw a monkey wrench in your production side, and you won't create the wealth. If you err too much on the distribution side, the people who are creators will pack up and go somewhere else. It's a very tough thing, and by the way, it's very vivid. I mean, I'm not a South African historian, and I'd be the last person to recite here, but I'd say there's no more vivid example of that than South Africa at the time of, when the great changes and the first election took place, and there was an overriding, injunction to redistribute. Gosh, I can't speak anymore. To distribute differently than you used to. But at the same time, not be careless about doing it in such a way that the wealth creators in the first place who were needed for the economic system were made so anxious that they took their marbles and went home and left a fairer distribution of nothing. And that's a tension that, to my eye, was one of the most extreme cases of trying to recreate a fairer society, at the same time not create such a state of anxiety for those that had the means of production that they disassembled the means of production and took it elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Look at what happened in neighboring countries. That's something that on a less intense scale goes on everywhere. If you sit in the United States with the debates, you'd hear arguments of inequality, and these are statistics, and I assume the statistics don't lie, you'd say how society has gotten more unequal in the last 2 decades. And the people who have been the beneficiaries of that inequality are stressed out and will shout out, redistributionists, as if that were a dirty word, and are very adverse to highly progressive tax systems. The system has to be some reconciliation of those competing principles. You have to accomplish both those objectives. And by the way, that's the political art, not the businessman. The businessman not only has the right to advise what the consequence of these actions are, I think you have the duty and the responsibility to advise, but where you come out on the spectrum is always a political decision and a social decision of where that comes out. But I'm explaining to you what I think the inputs are.
Oh, well, you've been described as sitting on the pinnacle of finance, and it seems almost incongruous sitting here talking about inequality to an investment banker, where executive remuneration, for one, has come under the spotlight. It's a big topic. It's a big issue in South Africa as well. What's your response to that kind of criticism? Well,
let me start out with, again, going back to the predicate in the beginning. I know I'm a big fat cat plutocrat kind of guy. But I will tell you, I've been the beneficiary of some of these redistribution policies. I grew up in public housing, and I went through every institution I went to as a kid. I'm so loyal, and you have in my introduction all those advisory committees at Harvard, because I went through those schools on full scholarship, not because of my intellect, but they were need-based. I qualified for scholarship, so I was the beneficiary of it. Sometimes I wish I had amnesia, because there's lots of things I'd like to forget, but that isn't one of them. So now, what do I think of?
That level of criticism that's out there.
Well, I will tell you, I've been, in my role, some things have worked well and some things have worked poorly. I've gone through good times and bad times. I've been lauded and I've been criticized, and I much more enjoy the flattery and the laud than I enjoy the criticism and the...
Nevertheless, how do you handle criticism?
That didn't answer your question?
No, it didn't. How do you handle the criticism, and does it influence your approach to business?
Of course it is. Guys, listen, I will tell you this, that I and people who have survived in my position, there are a lot of people who've been in my position, not all of them have survived, and who knows, you never hear the one, on my, after my retirement, I'll go back and tell you whether I survived or not, after my voluntary retirement, so who knows. But, first of all, you must have had a thick skin to be where I am today. So I guess I have had a thick skin. I didn't know it, but I guess I do. But having a thick skin doesn't mean you don't feel what's coming at you and what hits. And when you feel it, of course you react to it. And by the way, you should. Everybody's under lots of different pressures. I said I'm under the pressure of the shareholders, but I'm under pressure of the people who work at Goldman Sachs with me. I'm under the impression of the people who write about Goldman Sachs. I would love to say I can ignore the media, but I can't because they're influencers. You try to do the right thing, but people pull you in directions. What is the right thing? The right thing is also the stable thing and surviving. And when I say surviving, I'm talking about my institutional self, not my personal self. And of course you're influenced by it, and you should, but you shouldn't be over-influenced by it. You know, the first day out of this, when they had the crisis, there was going to be no more investment banking. That was gone forever. So I said, well, you mean nobody is going to start new businesses? No one's going to need financing? No one's going to sell parts of their company or buy other parts of other people's company? No one's going to manage assets anymore? You mean that investment banking? And, you know, and so in certain ways we stuck to our guns and certain things we changed. But you can't be a successful politician if you bend in the wind and listen to what everybody tells you to do. And you can't be a politician if you never listen to people.